nation. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Show. We are less than a day away from a new administration, right? A new
6 hours.
a new direction, and and we'll see. And Diane and I were talking about yesterday, and black folks are hoping and wishing and praying, right?
I
In,
don't know what they're praying for, but hopefully something good. Good morning.
see, hopefully. In there,
Morning, Diane.
good morning, Vincent and Diane. How are you guys?
I'm wonderful.
Isn't that a song?
I don't get a good morning.
I said good morning. Oh, Diane.
Not you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Diane, he's waiting.
Have health troubles over yet?
Oh, come on now.
Wow. I'd like to actually ask.
See, Vincent, she makes you.
What have I done to
No.
develop such a
No.
disdain?
You know what, Vincent? She's just making you work for it. That's all. That's all. So listen, isn't there a song in the lyrics are something like hoping and wishing and praying and something, right? It's a love song, right? It's about somebody hoping and wishing that they're going to be loved, right? And that's kind of Black America.
It's not love that I'm looking for, just mutual, courteous, politeness, respect.
Well, let's talk about those things. Respect. When black folks don't respect themselves, when the neighborhoods are filthy, when the schools are failing, how can we demand respect from other people? When we don't respect ourselves, how do we do that?
Well, I can't tell you about black people as a whole, but I can tell you about this black person as an individual.
Yeah, but we can agree, right? That I don't know whether unfortunately or not, they don't look at us as individuals, and we don't, and to be, if we're honest, if we're really honest, we don't look.
I'm going to be really honest.
Go ahead.
I could give two
Rats' asses.
fill in the blank.
I
about
already did.
How they look at me. What I do have a great concern about is how I'm being treated. And you teach people how to treat you.
Sure.
And one thing that I'm really, this adolescent juvenile of, I ain't talking to him. I mean, come on, let's be adults about this. Can we at least be civil enough to exchange some common courtesies of good morning?
Oh, we're talking about Diane.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were talking about like the world. I'm sorry. Diane, give him a good morning.
What's that song? If I don't look at you, I don't F with you. What was that song?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you wake up on?
But the world will still go around without a good morning to certain people. I'm sure
It does.
Well,
However,
look.
at a certain point,
there's always a however.
yes, there is always a however, which takes away from the but.
Too early is Tuesday.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we can at least be professional, and professional courtesies are generally a norm.
Please stop whining. It's so unbecoming of a black man.
It's not whining. What I'd like to get is resolution because of the constant conflict. I really do not like starting my day with this thing hanging over my head. In which, you know what, I am such a dumb man and totally oblivious as to why. So that's all I want is a little clarity and understanding.
All right. So look, I didn't know that this was going to turn into a therapy session for you guys.
Oh, we won't.
But I'll give you my. Wait a minute. Wait. No. But I don't have a problem with it. I'll just send you guys my Cash App. That's all. Look.
You might want to bill me for a double session.
Hey, listen. Look. I'll let you pay what you think it's worth. I'm not even gonna put a dollar amount on it. But Listen,
Peace,
we've got,
peace is actually priceless.
you know, it is priceless, Vincent. I'm willing to, I gotta, I I'm willing to pay a decent amount for, and I have, you know what, I have paid a lot for peace.
Me too.
Oh
Me
gosh.
too.
Oh
You're talking to
gosh.
a man who's been divorced twice. I
Oh,
paid a lot for peace.
I've paid a lot for peace, man.
Been there, done that.
Ah,
All I
gosh.
got left was the T-shirt.
Right. You know what? That's a great shirt. I have paid a lot for peace. um. Anyway, so and folks are hoping to find peace. So listen, I'm just gonna give a slight rundown of what we're gonna talk about today. We're going to talk about the ensuing inauguration, the current climate in Washington right now with, what did you say, Vincent, 25,000 or over 25,000
25,000
National Guards, men and
Not to
women.
mention Secret Service and
Right.
an additional service that we don't even know about.
Right. So we got all of that going on, right? And we can spend some time talking about what that means for America, what that means for Black America in particular. I want to go back and do our part two of unpacking what Dr. Chris was talking about when she did her exquisite Zoom live where she was breaking down the COVID-19 virus, breaking down the vaccine, breaking down the injustices that have led to historic injustices that have led to the distrust that Black Americans have for the pharmaceutical industry, for government, for the medical industry, for all of that, right? And she was working to dispel, based on facts, these conspiracy theories around why you shouldn't take, why they say, the anti-vaxxers say, you shouldn't take the vaccine or you shouldn't listen to the science. So we'll be talking about that too. So I was listening to Fox News this morning, guys. And well, so this is why I'm listening to Fox News now. Because they whined every day for 4 years about Donald Trump being ragged on, right? For 4 years, they kept saying, you know, this is what the media is putting out about Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. If you watch Fox News now, you see them starting to shape the narrative, right? Starting to build the traps, if you will, right, for Biden. And they're mapping out what 4 years are going to be like and how they're going to shape and continue to cultivate their audience, right?
Oh, okay, now I'm captivated. So, express to me how the Democratic doom and gloom station has now. How do they see our next 4 years? How do they predict in their precognitive development of what's going to happen with our country? Because you keep in mind, I'm only saying it out of complete sarcasm because this was a group of people who said that Donald Trump was going to win by a landslide.
Right. Well, look. I mean, I don't want to go down that road because the other group of people in 2016 said that Hillary Clinton was going to win, right? So I don't want to do that. Yeah, right. Like I think Steve Karnacki was eating crow. Yeah, I think Steve
Media said that she lost.
What?
Trump said it was a landslide.
Wait, what are you talking about? I'm talking about 2016.
Yes, the polls said that Hillary Clinton was going to win.
Well, no. The polls said it. MSNBC said it. Right? Rachel Maddow said it. Steve Kornacki said it. Wait a minute. We go down the list. Don't make me pull the tapes out. They all said it.
pull the tapes out, and because I was listening, I was there. I was one of those people who was, okay, she's going to win according to these polls that they're reporting on. And yet we did, even in the show, talk about how the polls were right. The problem was because Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. So the polls were right. What they didn't quite get is the margin of error, where they said the 2-point margin of error is where Donald Trump got his 2 points and won certain states to win the electoral college vote.
Right, but wait a minute, but just stop. See, Vincent, you go down these rabbit holes, and then you force me to do this. So the same polls. Wait a minute. The same polls. How many votes did Donald Trump get?
Last 2014.
No. In 2020, how many votes did he get? 74, almost 75 million votes. Right?
I think 70.
No, 74, close to 75 million votes. Right? Now, how many votes did Biden get?
Let's see.
I'll let you look it up, because
give you the exact
right,
number.
you get the exact number, because what I'm saying to you is those same polls, right? When you look at the areas, and you look at what Donald Trump's people were looking at, the pollsters were looking at, they were looking at well, there were some unknowns, right? And the unknowns were these mail-in ballots, right? These absentee ballots, right? They couldn't figure that piece out, but they did know, based on the people who said that they were going to vote, the people who showed up at the polls to vote, who came out, they knew those numbers. Which is why part of their concern, right or wrong, their concern was, well, wait a minute, we're looking at this, and then all of a sudden there's this influx of votes that are coming in, right? So they did not, so much like in 2014, the pollsters were unable to decipher in those swing states those margins of error. In 2020, the pollsters, the ones that they were looking at, the polls that the Trump folks were looking at, they weren't able to accurately calculate those absentee ballots. Right? So, but if you want to just look at the popular vote, I'm saying, so outside of winning in these swing states, how many votes, raw votes, did Donald Trump get, and how many raw votes did Joe Biden get?
Okay, now let's see. I got the electoral, and we've got state by state in battlegrounds, but I'm looking for the raw total.
Right.
And
So what? So
in terms of the popular vote, Biden won the popular vote.
No, I'm not saying he didn't win. I'm saying how many votes did he get?
Okay. Let's see.
See, we're spending time going down this rabbit hole that you're driving us down for me to prove a point, right? So the point that you were trying. No, I understand what you're trying to.
Okay,
but
no, and I believe Biden won somewhere close to 5 million over Trump.
I'm not saying he didn't, but you're missing the point, Vincent. Again, so the point. I'm gonna tell you what the point is. So what you were trying to do is discredit the folks on Fox because of how they read the polls. And I'm saying to you...
No, I'm discrediting the folks on Fox because before the election, they were saying, without even polling, that Donald Trump was going to win by a landslide.
Right, but stop, Vincent, because they're always polling. Stop. People are always polling. They're not pulling these numbers out of their rear ends. right? They're not pulling.
They pulled the win. They didn't pull any numbers. They didn't pull any polls. They were basically giving their opinion and saying that Donald Trump was going to win.
Vincent,
And that was even before they
Vincent,
started.
I'm saying, listen.
They didn't even listen to any polls.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Then it got so
Vincent.
bad that they didn't even go to reliable poll sources.
Vincent, so again, because you want to prove your point, you're missing the bigger picture. Listen, you're always polling, even if they're looking at the number of people who are commenting on their feed. That's a poll. That's a poll. They're looking, going, well, how many people commented positively toward that thing? How many people commented negatively toward that thing? How many new viewers did we get? How many, all of that data, they're always data mining, Vincent, always. So they're like, wait, stop, Vincent, stop it. Stop it, please.
Why don't we just come to the realization of this? Okay, you are not going to be in favor of anything that
No.
you are not going to be adverse to anything that has to do with Trump. So
No, that's not true. That's not true, Vincent, but I want to be fair.
Tell me one thing that you are actually adverse to Trump about.
Oh, that he incited insurrection, right?
Okay.
That, wait a minute, I can go down a list of things, but here's my thing to you again, right? I can get, so what good will that do you once I do that, right? Because if we're not, if
Well, what good it does me once you do that,
Yeah.
now we have a common base to work upon.
no, because you're never, understand this, you're never taught, literally every single, you can't wait to rail on Trump. Right?
Yeah,
Wait.
maybe.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And so what I'm saying is this. I'm trying to be a counterbalance to your endless desire to rail on Trump. That's all I'm trying to do. Be a counterbalance to that. And so when I say to you that both media, that the right wing, right, which literally is one station, right? It's so you got Fox News on TV, and then you've got on AM radio, you've got one or two stations, right? So that's the right wing media. Then everything else is left wing media, right? And when I say to you that, you know what, they in this thing there was miscalculation on both sides, you sit and I don't know how you do it, but you somehow bypass the miscalculations over here in order to highlight the miscalculations over there. And all I'm saying to you is, look, both sides did it. Both sides said that their guy was going to, or their person was going to win. They said their person was going to win in 2014. 2016, and they said their person was going to win in
Okay,
2020.
So can we agree that both sides said that their person was going to win?
That's all I'm saying.
We do agree upon that.
Sure.
Well, can we agree upon that in both situations, 14 and 20, that those other sides were wrong?
Sure. That's all I'm saying. That's all I've been saying.
Now, can we agree that, the simple fact that 2016 is now gone and past, and now we're into 2020?
Sure.
Then that's where I wanted to stay.
Well, that's where you started off with that. You took
What? Okay.
So,
we were talking about what we were talking about today. You went all the way back to that election.
I went back to that because of saying this. When I hear Fox News, when I hear Fox News, because of the overt favoritism and lack of actual sometimes journalistic integrity,
wait a minute.
I give them the side.
Wait a minute. Wait. Overt favoritism. So when well, he's no longer on MSNBC, right? Chris Matthews, when he talked about Obama sending tingles up his leg, right? Or when we talk about Lawrence O'Donnell. See, this is what I'm saying, Vincent. So you somehow see that there's favoritism, overt, you said. Favoritism over here. But Lawrence, wait a minute. Lawrence O'Donnell, pardon me, Diane, and other people if this sounds offensive, but Lawrence O'Donnell had a hard-on for Donald Trump for 4 freaking years, and it was personal, and he talked about the personalness of it, or how personal it was to him. Rachel, wait a minute. Are you saying that Rachel Maddow wasn't overtly partial? Are you suggesting that? Are you? I want to get clear on this.
Here's the difference between Rachel Maddow being overtly or exuberant about Trump versus Trump, who had, and I'm going to quote you, had the stiff one for Obama. See, here is the difference between that. Rachel Maddow actually
Maddow.
brought in Rachel Maddow. Thank you. Actually brought in facts.
No.
The other ones.
I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. So let us be clear about the things that I'm agreeing with, right? I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I'm saying is Rachel also has the ability to bring in facts on the other side too, right? But she does. Wait. But she doesn't do the same level of ferreting information when it's going to damage somebody she's in support of. That's all I'm saying to you, Vincent. So she is brilliant at what she does, but she chooses who to aim her arrows at. Do you agree to that?
I will agree to that.
There we go.
I know for a fact when I talk about my child, there is a level in which I am speaking that may be borderline, father fantasy.
Right.
However, and so we all have that level of prejudice.
Right. So overt, and so you use the word overt, right? And I'm saying that that she is overt, and I'm saying that Chris Matthews was overt, and I'm saying that Lawrence O'Donnell is overt. So when you don't mention them being overt, but you're talking about Fox being overt, then once again I have to be the counterbalance.
No. When I talk about Fox being overt, it is basically stating the fact that led into this, that you were quoting Fox News. Those other people weren't in there. And to support my fact, again, the difference between Rachel Maddox and those other people on those other channels that were for or pushing the Biden narrative is that when they talked about Trump, they talked about the lies and they brought in the facts. The other groups just basically spewed this conspiracy thing.
No. But now you're conflating things, right? So if we're just talking about an overt bias, right? That's something different.
Prejudice. Why don't we call it what it is?
Right, or prejudice, right? Look, I'm not disagreeing. I don't want to overt prejudice, right? It's not a matter of fact or fiction. It's the desire to show the best of one and the worst of the other because of your personal feelings, right? And now how you go about doing that's where I'm saying you're conflating things. But we can agree, right, that on MSNBC, on CNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, that all of them have an interest in showing the Democrats in the best light possible, and at every turn, they want to show the Republicans in the worst light possible. Can we agree to that?
See, and this is where I disagree, because during the Reagan era, all of those people showed Reagan in the best light possible, and include, in spite of some of the atrocities that he did to black people. Those same stations that you mentioned during the both Bush's era, okay, they showed him the Gulf War hero, and then his son picking up the mantle. So no. They're not a Democratic group. These people like who they like.
I disagree with you on that. But go ahead, caller.
Okay, so good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Joey.
I like to rail on everyone because
running because this is something different, right?
I can't hear you, Jody. Can you speak up, please?
I'm sorry, babe. I said I'm good to rail on everyone. I like railing on all parts, right? I think that's fair. But I think you guys are being unfair with it, and because this is different. And we're seeing the Republican Party differently. We're seeing all of it, right? And I think the Democratic Party is just the shittiest vote. I think politicians in general are, press their interest, and in large part in our community, it has nothing to do with us, and it's never moving us forward. But where we are today is something totally different. What we're seeing today is something totally different. Rachel Maddow, while she has that bias, and so that's media, right? We hear different stations or different networks or different owners of those networks, right, have their pressed opinion. But at the end of the day, we are seeing that the Republican Party presses racism and white supremacy, and that Donald Trump is not. No, he is not the issue, but he definitely allowed them space and opportunity to be exactly who they want to be, and we're seeing that.
Wait a minute. Can I stop you for a second, Jody?
If 100 and some odd Republican congressmen and senators were willing to say that this election was a fraud, and still today, right? So still today, after their people in large part ran up on their Capitol steps and wanted to cut their heads off and hang them high, right? We're seeing now that those people were saying that your vote was shit, that your vote should not be counted.
No,
That is
I understand that.
different.
No, but let me ask you a question, Jody. Jody, can I ask you a question? So, prior
I
to,
can't hear you. I'm sorry.
can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit.
Yeah, Vincent, is that your phone?
I don't.
Somebody's rustling papers. So let me ask you this question. Prior to Donald Trump, all of the things that have been going on in the black community, policies that have adversely impacted the black community, right? I want to ask, where was Rachel Maddow reporting those? Where was any of these people on these other stations reporting that any of those things? Where were they outing all of the Democrats who weren't actively pushing back against the structural racism that has crippled the black community here in America? They just watched it happen. They were wait a minute. Well, no, I'm gonna let me finish.
Go ahead.
They sat and watched it. And you know when they reported stuff? When it bubbled up, right? So once there was a reaction to what was going on, then they tried to jump in front of it and talk about it. But if there was no reaction to it, they just let it go. So all of these numbers, all of these things that we know are impacting, all of the things that Dr. King talked about that I played yesterday that were impacting that have been impacting the black community, that have led to this overwhelming burden on the black community that has led us down so many dark paths. They all know it. But when we turn the news on, they are.
You're comparing action to complacency, right? You're saying that their complacency makes them
As complicit.
as the action, and at this juncture, I don't think we can buy that, right? I don't think that we can say that their lack of action to stand up on the rails and say, Ungawa Black Power, is something totally different.
No, I'm not saying say Ungawa Black Power. I'm saying that it's not about them raising a fist for black people as much as it is calling out the overt racism, right, and the continued support of the structure that supports white supremacy in this country. So here's what I'm saying, and then Vincent, you can say what you want to say. In this election,
Okay.
I've not heard the term white supremacy used as much as I heard it used in the last, say, 6 months in my whole life, right? But Rachel knew about white supremacy, right? Chris Matthews knew about white supremacy. Lawrence O'Donnell knew about white supremacy. So all of them who jumped in front of this and started talking about white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, all of a sudden bringing like dragging black people on their shows to talk about. They didn't know. You're telling me before now they didn't know? But they didn't have the impetus to do it. Why? Because it hadn't bubbled up to this level yet. So they were forced to do it. But they never wanted to do it.
See, I find that to be a half truth, because when all of this racial stuff started pulling up, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, they were all pointing that right in America's face. They even down to the simple fact of how, even though they got it late, how disproportionate blacks were being affected by the virus, how disproportionate blacks were being affected by the stimulus bill, how disproportionately blacks was being affected by the tests and the trials, how disproportionately, yet Fox never, ever made one of those reports.
I agree with you, Vincent. I agree with that.
And then if you agree with me, then why would you make that statement?
Well, because understand what I'm saying, because you're missing what I'm saying. So I'm saying to you that what the other station did, the liberal station, what they did, because they knew they know all the statistics that we quote about where the black community is, whether we've made advancements since Dr. King or not. They know all of that. They know about the racial wealth gap. They know about the education, the racial gap in education. They know all of it. But they saw fit in this moment to talk about it because we had an election coming up. And they saw that they could bludgeon Donald Trump with it. They could emotionalize black people. But here's the thing now. Watch. Your very beloved MSNBC. Let's see how much they talk about it now that the election is over. Let's see how much they love Black lives and how much they talk about Black Lives Matter. How much press we get now. And I'm telling you, we won't get shit now. We'll get it in. We'll start getting it in another 3 years when they know an election is coming up again.
And this is where I disagree, okay? Because of one specific fact. White America saw George Floyd not resisting, not having a weapon, not doing anything. They heard him, could not breathe, and please take his knee off his neck. They heard him cry out to his dead mother. And that changed because that took away all the excuses of the police killings. All of it. Now we have more white people out there yelling and screaming, Black Lives Matter. So don't even sit up here and say, oh, they just did that and there's not going to be anything. No, this is an awakening of a consciousness of America against injustice and against racism. And no, I'm not going to sit up here and downplay it. I'm going to sit up here and say, no, keep your foot on the gas.
Call it go. Call it go.
Hey, what's going on? Eric, I disagree with you in the sense that media is corporation. They're all corporations. Fox, CNN, MSNBC. And white supremacy wasn't profitable. There's no feel-good story and constantly repeating those news lines. And investigative reporting has gone by the wayside. So there's no glamour in poverty and bringing about these issues that need to be addressed. So from that standpoint, they're not going to do it. And Donald Trump is very profitable. You see how the guy from CBS, hey, this Donald Trump may not be good for the country, but he's good for business. But if people whether you give Donald Trump bad press or good press, to him, it's all press, and he's going to profit on it.
Right.
His name is out there, so they tie all of this bad stuff to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's like, hey, my name is in the news. You know, I'm out there. That's free advertisement for him. So they're not. I mean, until we get our Congress people and representation, our representation to regulate the corporate media in that they must do some investigative reporting, or they must have, if you're going to have one person from one side, you must balance it out with having somebody else on the other side. And they're not doing that. Everybody's in their own silo. And it's convenient for MSNBC now to talk about white supremacy because we're about to be overrun with it.
Exactly.
You know?
Well,
It's news.
but-
It is America. And once again, that awakening. And now people are saying, oh no, this isn't America. And black people are saying, yes, it is. 1896.
So
And everybody's closed-minded to the you know, there's no having a decent conversation with somebody of an opposite thought because we've all been conditioned to be in our corners and stay over there.
So let me ask you a question, Mike. Because you said that we're about to be overrun with white supremacy. So you don't believe that prior to Donald Trump, the way that they were moving on our schools, the way that they were moving on our communities, the way that they were still passing legislation, you don't believe that we were being overrun by white supremacy?
You asked me a question.
No, I asked Mike a question.
So let me answer. Can I respond? Yeah, I believe that its racism has an economic value. It was that our community was in large part was going along with the racism. It helped their family survive. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna say nothing. My family's good.
Exactly. Exactly.
I believe that it was a problem before Donald Trump. Yeah,
we keep going back and forth with that, right? We can't blame anyone for a school system, let's say in North, or black folks. They've been running it. Has nothing to do with a corporation unless they started to join, right? That is our fault. That is not their fault. If North Public Schools has a $1.1 billion budget, and all my lifetime it's been run by black people, and the city of Newark itself has been run by black people. I don't care what side of the aisle it is, right? It doesn't really matter. These are black people running the lives of black people and ran their lives into the ground. That's not a good analogy as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
But I think
I'm not. When you say that our fault, it's our fault, you marginalize the people who are actually out there. And you can say in large part it's our fault. It's not all of our fault because there are people out there that are spitting the wind on the subject.
Now, wait a minute.
In a way, if I agree with some of what Jody said,
I'm not disagreeing with it. It's our community.
Exactly.
Okay.
But in large part, you're right, Mike. You're absolutely right.
Right.
And it's our fault for putting up with it and bending over and taking it.
Right. What?
That's
So
our fault.
so I want to.
over. So that's the issue, right? No one was bending over, right? The superintendent of North Public Schools, at least since I was in, let's say, high school, and I'll be 52 in a minute, right? Have been black men and women. They ran that school district, right? That budget came to them, right? And some of them, the state took over because black people were stealing money from black kids, right? That is no part of white supremacy.
Jody.
That is black supremacy.
Jody. Wait.
With disrespect and not caring about our children.
Right, Jody.
Yep.
So let me just a point of clarification. When we say, or when you say that black people were running it, I'm going to disagree with you. See, when I say that black elected officials that they win seats, not power. So yes, they're sitting in the seats, but they're not running stuff. Decisions are being made.
Running that budget.
No, listen to what I'm saying to you. Listen to what I'm saying to you. I'm saying to you that I don't believe that they're making decisions about that budget until they have other conversations with people. You see, and who those people are? That because understand this, right? When these folks who are by and large who run for these seats, they are supported by an apparatus. They're supported by an apparatus. Now, I'll go and we'll talk about, let's say, Big Steve, who's no longer here. May he rest in peace. Big Steve, you can believe that those people who won, and I can say it for a fact, because I used to be over at the North Ward Center and I'd be at some of those meetings. They didn't do shit without checking with Big Steve. And now I knew Big Steve. I also knew Norcross.
You know what your greatest example of that's not true, right? Is as Baraka in his first election ran against the establishment.
Oh no, you're right. Wait a minute. Nope. You're right. Nope. Listen. Nope. You're right. You're right. Jody. No, Vincent, you hear me trying to clarify something. Don't.
That's the apparatus.
Wait a minute. Wait.
No, he went from running.
Vincent, why would you do? Vincent, why would you do? Vincent, why would you do that? You hear me trying to communicate something to Jody, right? Let me. So Jody, I agree with you that Baraka was off the plantation, right? He was off the plantation. And then you know what? That corporation that I talk about drug his ass right back on it. And that's why in the next election, you saw him lined up with all of the people that he swore he was going to be there to destroy. That's my whole point. That's my whole point to you.
But this is my point, right? I don't think that he was taken in a back room, and he didn't have to. So even if he was taken in the back room and told, "Hey, now you gotta listen, Negro, you beat us. You beat us with not even a third of the coffer that we had. You beat us. That was a moral choice.
Yeah.
That he wanted to play. That he used his people, right? He used the plantation to get to where he wanted
Jody.
to be.
Jody.
He never, ever had his pick on
Jody.
the plantation
Jody.
because he wanted to pick off.
Jody. So I'm going to try to explain to you like this. They knew, again, power versus seat, right? So let's stay there. Power versus seat. So when Ras Baraka ran, right, he ran believing that he would have power, right? So what would he say? When I become mayor, we become mayor, right? That all these economic things I'm gonna be able to control and direct, and I'm gonna be able to move our community forward, right? I'm gonna be able to do these things. I'm gonna do them, and I'm gonna vanquish all of these people. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna have the power to do it. Once he got in there, what he realized was that he had access to a set number of jobs that he could give to people. Set number of jobs. Outside of that, and remember the early days when he had to go and he had to speak with Chris Christie, and he went down there with Joe D, and Chris Christie backhanded him, right? And then he started to learn a little bit. Then when they had the debacle with the 28 inches of snow, and Joe D said, "I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you. You go ahead and figure out how to dig those people out." In 2 weeks, those folks in Newark sat there trying to figure it out, and he couldn't do anything. Joe D could have sent some trucks there. They taught him. They said, "You're going to learn. You're going to learn." And then now, so I want you to understand this, that as mayor, when these things are happening, these huge things that are impacting lives, Raz is looking going, My election in 2018 is slipping away, and I'm not even a year and a half in office yet. Then, wait a minute. Then they pulled him in a room and they said, do you want to be mayor again? Do you want to be mayor again? Then you need to tone down your rhetoric. You need to do all of these things that we're talking about.
And you need to be a good boy.
And you need to be a good boy.
But Eric, here's the thing. What is the difference between what Raz Baraka is doing and what the Republican Party is doing now? They are siding with racists. They are siding with white supremacists because of the simple fact that they want to be reelected.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
Well, we're talking about...
I disagree with that. Hold on. The difference between Raz Baraka and what's happening with the Republican Party, they empowered the worst of their party. Now, Baraka didn't get in and empower those people to improve their community. And like Eric said, when the 27 inches fell on the community and they wouldn't help the community, he was supposed to say, all right, this is our chance. Let me empower you here. Let me tell you exactly what's going on. But the words stay within the tight knit.
There we go.
People in a problem, and the big difference is in how we are going to empower people. You're empowering the worst of America, but you're keeping the other side without power.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. At some point in time, with both cases, they are oppressing the other side. Raz Baraka, hold on. Hear me, Mike. Let me finish. Mike. Hold on. Let me finish.
Mike, let him. Mike, let.
I'm not going to let you finish in the sense that white people in large part in this country are not being oppressed. Cut it out.
That's what I'm saying. White people are not being oppressed.
You said both sides of both.
Mike, if you can let me get the words out before you cut me off, then you can get an understanding to my point.
No.
Now, as I was saying, okay, they are pandering to a group that wants to stay in power. The difference between Raz Baraka was this. Raz Baraka went in going against the establishment, and when he needed help, the people that he was railing against found a perfect opportunity to tell him to kiss their butt. Now, so he was left there, but I'm not even going to say
Go ahead.
He was left there in a bad position, and he decided to get something done, was to go with that party. And he became the
difference between pandering and oppression. There's a big. First you said oppression, oppressing the people, and then you said, now you're saying, so which one is it? Are they pandering or oppressing the people?
Okay, they are pandering to the. Okay, Republicans are pandering to a group that want to oppress black people.
Okay.
Let me make that clear.
Okay.
Now, Raz Baraka was pandering to a group that wanted freedom, found himself all alone with his butt wide open.
So right, we don't need the graphic thing. My only point in this,
he was alone when he went to Christie.
Okay.
my only point to this, my only point of clarification.
That was his choice.
My only point of clarification to Jody was to let us be clear when we're talking about people running things, right? That they're not running things. They are allowed to be in these positions. And yes, just like, because we can find these anomalies not just in Newark but everywhere else, right? But let's stay in Newark for a second. Remember Jody? And I supported him, and then I railed against him afterwards, right? But remember Marquise Lewis, right? When Marquise Lewis first ran for the Board of Education, I was so proud of that young man, right? Because he ran against, and in fact, he beat Steve. He came to my dad's house, sat with us. The young man was out there, didn't have any money. He had his literature Xeroxed on pink pieces of paper and green pieces of paper and yellow pieces of paper because he couldn't afford reams of white paper. So he was getting whatever paper he could get donated to him. And he was out there knocking on doors. And nobody had ever seen that before, right? The machine was, used to calculating based on numbers that were coming in from committed voters and da 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 da. He said, I'm just going to go pound the pavement, right? But then again, what did he do afterwards? He got there, right? They took him into the back room and they said, well, okay, you made it, right? So now, do you want to be somebody important? And this reminds me of the Matrix again, right? Where they showed him what it looks like being plugged into the Matrix and what it looks like outside. And on the outside of the Matrix, that steak is really slop, right? And they said, do you want to know that? Do you want to be an important person? Do you want to believe that what you're eating is steak? Do you want that? You like that? Well, then let us plug you back in. You can have those things. And Marquise Lewis, he just went and said, okay, plug me back in. I'm in.
Yeah, I don't want to remember nothing.
I don't want to remember anything. Make me somebody important. And then they made him somebody important too, right? They made him the president of the Board of Education, right? So that's what I'm saying. They had the power to do that. He had no power. They had the power to make him the president of the Board of Education.
Okay. So here's my point, right? That to me that's not power, right? That's choice, right? That's a moral decision whether I'm gonna grind. And so Marquise, that's like, okay, I can't even use that as an example, right? Because he didn't have the wherewithal, because he didn't have the intellect to try to do different, right? Let's run back to Barack, right? If I beat the establishment, right, with numbers, much like this election we saw, what we're seeing now, right, is the railing against what is perceived by the corporation as our power. And we can actually put a president into office, right? We can change the Senate, right? So now we, as the kids would say, so now the corporation is big mad. So we spent thousands and thousands of people to let it be known on the Capitol steps that we are big mad at that power. And we perceive, right? Brad showed the power, right? He beat the establishment. So that wasn't that he had to submit. He chose to submit.
Oh, he did.
For his personal gain.
Sure.
Right? I'm not blaming that on nobody.
Oh, no, I'm not blaming anybody. But I want another point of clarification. We gotta have these points. So when we talk about because we continue to talk about the power of the black vote to choose a president, right? I'm saying to you that we were bamboozled, right? That we were manipulated, we were messaged to, and we did what we were told. See, all right, Pavlov's dog. We did what we were told. We did what we were told. So if you do what you were told, you had no power. They had the power to get us to do what we were told to do. Right? And so now, and listen, wait a minute, and then I'm 30 more seconds, Jody. So I'm saying that the corporation of white supremacy is not mad. The corporation of white supremacy says it worked. We told them to do this and they did it. And because the corporation is operating on both sides, they're not just operating on the Republican side, they're operating on the Democrat side as well. They said we got them to do, they didn't move on their own. See, as long as black people are not moving on their own, see, if black people move on their own, then the corporation of white supremacy is nervous. But if the corporation of white supremacy can calculate the movement of black people based on how they message to us, then they're winning. They anticipate.
The corporation of white supremacy.
Right? So let's right? Let's say they message and you prove it right? We were sent to this election. And it was great. And it happened, right? The problem is that
Mute your phone, Vincent.
the power, we don't capitalize off the power, right? So we talked about this too a few weeks ago.
Thank you.
When the Hispanic community sat down and said, hey, we want this. and gave it. Like, this is what we want, right? But Clyburn said, you don't owe us nothing.
Right.
That is a decision that we keep making as a people to not capitalize off of our power, right? And that is, we can't blame anyone for that. We can't even blame the Democratic Party that they've been allowed to message to a group of people that have never capitalized off of the power that we have, right? And we keep putting these people in office, or we allow these people to say they're our messengers or our leadership, and then our leadership turns around and says, hey, yeah, we gave you that election. Don't owe us nothing. Right? That's power. Right? Brad had an opportunity to say, listen, y'all got money, I got some people. And so I'm going to promote what my agenda is for the people, because I can meet you back here again, and you can have your $375,000, and I can move it with my $50,000, because I have the people, right? He never had this to come. He could actually use the people, those same people.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
I agree with Jody.
Same people to say, yo, and I'm going to keep running you down until you give to my people. Ras Baraka was never a militant. Ras Baraka was never Boom Gower Black Power.
Right, but I get that. But Jody, the reason they weren't going to be able to fence it. Okay. I don't want to defend Jody. The reason he was unable to do that.
The corporation of white supremacy may be happy in your explanation, but the benefits or the trickle down from the top right now was really upset because of black awareness.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, I agree. No, I agree. You don't need to elaborate anymore.
Okay, so these people are upset because the corporation of white supremacy said to them, look, we're about to lose our power.
I agree. I'm not
the capital.
No. I agree with the fact that the corporation of white supremacy was concerned that the heat was turned up, right? Remember we talked about and then we're going to talk about this for 5 more minutes, and we're going to get on to COVID, right? But yeah, the whole frog experiment, right? So the corporation of white supremacy doesn't like to have these uprisings, right? They want to keep black people singing and dancing and shucking and jiving and all that kind of stuff. And so when this thing happened, there was an uprising, and they said, what the hell? What the hell? We don't want this, right? We want to get back to, vanilla toast, moderation. We want to get back to,
We don't want this because this is now taking away our power.
No. You know what? They said this is bad for business.
Okay.
There we go.
What does business bring you?
Right. Well, whatever. Right. But they said this is bad for business. How do we get back to business without these black people doing this? How do we do that? Now, and what I'm saying to you is that the corporation of white supremacy then put in motion, because when you looked at that diverse stage, right, and you saw how the uprising could have continued, right? How if certain people were nominated, how this thing would have been accelerated. They said no. What we need to do is we need to calm those Negroes down. We don't need to rile them up. We don't need them talking about reparations. We don't need them talking about all of this stuff, right? But what we do need to do is we need to make them feel like we understand them. Right? So let's bring some black people on our news networks and let's talk about the corporation of white supremacy. Let's talk about all of these different things because it'll relate to them, right? And they'll be emotionalized because they'll say, we're connecting with them, right? And we'll do all of this and that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. Now I could be proven wrong over the next, say, 3 months or 4 months. Let's look at how the media talks about Black Lives Matter. And I'm not talking about the organization. I'm talking about Black Lives Mattering. Let's see those same news organizations that had no problem. I mean, they had unprecedented numbers of black people on their panels and on it. Let's see what those ratios look like over the next 3 months. And I'm telling you, they're going to look completely different because they've already accomplished what they attempted to accomplish, which was to message to black people, get us to herd us out to vote, and now they're done with us.
Well, I disagree
We'll
because
see.
we have looked at the past and what they have done, and now people have said that
We'll
this
see.
is not working and have now moved for
Fine,
change.
fine.
I don't think people are looking
Fine.
to go back, Eric.
Fine. So we'll see, right? So we will see. Let's just monitor the next 3 months, just the next 3 months, and we'll see if there's a drastic shift in what they're talking about, or what they were talking about prior to the election, and what they're talking about now. What is top of mind to them? What is important to them? And let's see if we're as important to them as we were prior to election day. So listen, I got the and I think that it was apropos. I think it just worked out yesterday that the video with Dr. Chris ended because we were 5 minutes before the show ended anyway. But I want to kind of pick up where we left off yesterday, just playing some of the video, and then you guys can, because it's a live mic, so you guys can tell me. Just say, hey, Eric, can you pause it? Want to talk about this? And we'll pause it and we'll dive into it. I don't mind because, this is very important with the number of people dying. Although I do have to say before I start playing it that I am encouraged by the number of people who are out there going to get the vaccine. I'm encouraged, without any further ado, let me see if I can get this going. Here we go.
Important that we all understand
Here we
that,
go.
so that we can begin to disrupt, dismantle, and uproot. Unless we will never be able to achieve. It will be one pandemic after the other. So the color of coronavirus. This is something, we'll place this APM Research Lab link in the comments section because it's very...
Hold on one second, guys. I'm just trying to move the image over so that it is clear, so you can see, because I see I cut some stuff off, and I want you to be able to see the entire slide. So give me a second. We'll be right back on. Shucks. Let's see. Give me a second. Hold on. I didn't realize that I had cut it off. Okay, cool beans. Here we go.
Very, very important. And when I say Black and brown communities have been disproportionately impacted, this is what I'm talking about. We have seen the collision of two pandemics. That fast pandemic being the coronavirus pandemic, which I'll give you some facts around, and that slow pandemic being systemic racism. And it's the collision of those two pandemics that have caused earthquakes of devastation in Black and brown communities. So when I tell you that there is disproportionate risk of dying from coronavirus if you're Black or brown, this is what I'm describing. According to this research, which was updated as recent as the first week of January, Indigenous Americans are one in 595 have died. Black Americans, 1 in 735 has died. Pacific Islanders, 1 in 895 has died. Latinos, 1 in 1,000 has died. Whites, 1 in 1,030. And Asian Americans, 1 in 1,670 has died. Look at the differences in those rates. That's the disparity that I'm describing. Another way to say that, if I say 1 in 595 Indigenous Americans has died, that means per 100,000 people, there have been 168 deaths, okay? When we say 1 in 735 Black Americans has died, per 100,000 people, there have been 136.5 deaths. Now look at that number. And look at the number for white Americans, and you can begin to see the differences. You can begin to see the disproportionate burden, the disproportionate impact that Black and brown communities have shouldered. It's very important when we talk about risk associated with the vaccine. So you know about risk of mortality from coronavirus. I need for you to also understand risk of being infected, risk of being hospitalized. This is coming from the CDC. And the CDC compiled this data as of November 30th. And so what's very important here, the CDC will describe race and ethnicity as risk markers. I will go a step further and describe racism as the risk factor. Racism as a pre-existing condition. And you may be asking, why? Why is racism the pre-existing condition? Or why are we even talking about that? Because it's relevant. Because racism, as one scholar describes, the interlocking systems of racism directly impact and influence who works which jobs, meaning access to opportunity. Okay, the service and production industries, blacks and browns, African Americans and Latinos comprise, according to one statistic looking at census tract data, 43% of that industry. If blacks and browns comprise approximately 43% of that industry, those industries were frontline industries that very much did not shut down during the height of the pandemic. Those industries are your grocery store workers. Those industries are pharmacies. Those industries are critical retail. Those industries are persons working in meat packing plants. Okay, those industries are the postal worker, like my cousin that I described, my sister who was in large chain retail. The exposure associated with working those frontline jobs, and usually because they're associated with lower wages, they have less income protections, so less ability to work from home, okay? And also, we found that those jobs had less access to PPE. So that's what I'm describing when I say racism as a pre-existing condition. Another way that racism is a pre-existing condition that's influenced the case rates that you see there, and ultimately hospitalization and death, is where people live. Right? Historically excluded and marginalized communities, poor communities, black and brown communities who live in parts of the cities that bear the traumatic legacy of redlining, who live in neighborhoods that have been disinvested or disenfranchised, so live usually in crowded or cramped dwellings. So not only are these people working jobs that they could not work from home, these people are working jobs that they had to work because they didn't have income protections and their households were economically vulnerable. These people are going home to crowded, usually multi-generational dwellings, meaning that if you do get coronavirus, it is near impossible to quarantine or isolate. I should say, if you have it, isolate at home. That's why it's important. That's why it's important to talk about racism as a pre-existing condition, because that has fed and fueled the pandemic, especially the disproportionate burden. So you can see these numbers. You can look across the chart, whether you are American Indian or Alaska Native, as the CDC defines Asian, Black or African American or Hispanic or Latino or Latinx, you see the differences in your case rates, anywhere from 0.6 to almost 2%, 2 times more likely, I should say, to be exposed and infected. When we talk about hospitalization, anywhere from 1.2 to 4 times more likely to be hospitalized. And again, the staggering rates around death, 1 times to 2.8 times more likely to die. These numbers are important because when we talk about the risk that are associated with the coronavirus vaccine, you have to be able to weigh the risk of exposure, the risk of being infected, the risk of being hospitalized, the risk of death, and the risk of being infected and not being able to recover. I told you my sister was a long hauler. There was a study that was done in China that looked at hospitalized coronavirus patients, just hospitalized coronavirus patients. 75% of hospitalized coronavirus patients in China still had a lingering adverse effect to their health even after recovering. So my sister's was her lungs, right? Fatigue. She had to be on supplemental oxygen for quite some time. So that's all that you need to consider when you're making your decision journey. So the first case of coronavirus confirmed in the United States in 2020, January 20th, 2020. So we're still less than a year. Doesn't mean that it wasn't around in the community. This is the first laboratory confirmed diagnosis of coronavirus. To date, we've had more than 395,000 deaths. That is staggering. That is more deaths than every world war except for World War II and the Civil War. But unfortunately, we are poised to pass the deaths in World War II. Coronavirus is tracking to be the 3rd leading cause of death, behind heart disease and cancer. That is staggering. Okay, so this is important for risk. Not only is coronavirus tracking to be the third leading cause of of death, when you look at the daily death tolls, meaning that we've had days in early January where we've had more than 4,000 persons die in a day. That is more than the persons that die because of heart disease and or cancer. So in certain segments of the year, and in certain age populations, coronavirus is higher than the third leading cause of death, okay? I wanted you to see this because this was published by the New York Times. It gives you a sense of what we're talking about, the prevalence, right? How many cases are out there? We have passed 23 million cases in the United States. That's mind-blowing. This has been an unprecedented public health crisis, and the fact that we have lacked a coordinated, cohesive, strategic federal response, the fact that the White House has been the largest, and this was reported in the press, that the White House, and in particular, President Donald Trump, has been the largest source of misinformation, in addition to an uneven federal response, has contributed to this staggering case, right? So that compounds your risk. When you live in a nation where you don't have all levels of government aligned, speaking the same scientific truths and facts, and you don't have resources appropriately dispatched and distributed, you get numbers like these, okay? On January 16th, we had over 200,000 cases. Right, I already quoted you the deaths. On January 16th, we had 3,353 deaths on that day. Think about that. Think about that deaths tantamount and equivalent to the deaths we experienced in 9/11. We've been having successive 9/11, successive mass casualty events, and that's the rate of the number of folks hospitalized. I want to compare this to the flu because I
Eric, mute your phone.
No, you asked me to stop it.
So basically, what she's trying to make people understand is based on the demographics, based on who we are as people, and because we have not had access to many different things, why we're so susceptible, more likely to get COVID and more likely potentially to die. I think one of the conversations that people should be having now is when Biden is talking about his first 100 days and what he's going to do the first 10 days, and his scalability of saying he wants to get 100 million people vaccinated. How is that going to affect the Black community, and what are you doing in regards to closing that gap? Because not only is there a health gap, but there's an access gap when it comes to careers and education. That's the bigger concern. So yeah, you want to get people vaccinated, but that's just a temporary thing on top of what the Black community is still dealing with. If you're telling me the majority of us are in these service type positions that have not shut down, that have been essential workers.
Right. So those are all the things that I was talking about earlier, Diane, in terms of where, what has been happening structurally and systematically to Black Americans, right? And nobody has been talking about it. So we want to rail against one media group, and I'm saying this other media group over here that we seem to praise, they know these numbers. They know how staggering it is. And so now you asked this question. So for me, a Rachel Maddow, with all of her interns and her whole staff, she should be drilling into this, or I would like her to. And so I want to see over the next, because they did talk about it to some extent, right? Where they said, Black people are are disproportionately dying and all that kind of stuff. My question is, when was the last time?
Even had a special on CNN with Roland Martin and a few other people who talked about it and brought in the stats of it.
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying to you, this is still ongoing, right? So it's something that we should still be talking about. And like Diane said, so part of what this administration should be, we should be looking for them to talk to us about is not only how to more efficiently roll out the vaccines and do all that other kind of stuff, but how are you going to undergird the Black community, right, in a way that we're no longer vulnerable to these disproportionate adverse outcomes? What are you doing to do that? In all of the areas that the doctor spoke about, all of those areas should be addressed, right? So when we talk about repair, we need to be repairing those things. And it's not rising tides lift all boats, because people aren't dying at the rates that we're dying. So there should be something very specific for black people, because we're dying in a very specific way.
Well, looking at Biden's rollout plan on the coronavirus, and he basically states he's doing something that 45 has never done. He is giving more money to the states and directions in terms of them getting the vaccine, which now they found out that there is no more vaccines. There is no reserves that he is, and now they're pushing the pharmaceuticals to manufacture more. But he's saying that not only giving distribution or having it, but giving states money to set up things like massive vaccination sites. And even in South Jersey, the hospitals are now, because once you take the vaccine out of the freezer, you can no longer put it back. And they're finding themselves with some leftovers. So now they have a list of people, because people aren't making their appointments. Now they have a list of people online. So once that everybody is finished, they call these people in to get vaccines. Now, and that's by the governor that everybody's been kicking in the back. Yet, and then we're looking at also in his plans, not only giving states money, but he's also looking.
What does this have to do with black people, Vincent? What does this have to do with black people?
Concern is everything else, the underlying condition of poverty.
Right.
Of
So
access.
right. So if you so what I'm saying, and what Diane's question was, is this: we understand that America has whatever you want to call it, but black people got it 10 times worse. So what are you doing to deal with that disproportionate, right? The disproportionality of what's going on. Hold on. That's what I want to know. So when you talk and say, well, this is what they're doing, I'm saying specifically for black people or for everybody? And if you say for everybody, then that's rising tides lift all boats. And I'm saying no, because black people don't have no boats.
I'm saying that you are wrong, because black people not only have votes, but prove that the black vote wins. Okay?
Vote, not vote. Vote. B-O. Vincent. Vincent. Vote. Vincent. B-O-A-T. Vote, not vote. Vote.
Okay.
Rising tides. I said what you were saying about Biden was about rising tides lifting all boats. So here comes a tide, and everybody's gonna benefit. And I'm saying, but black people ain't got no boat. So we got to first give black people a boat. So one of the things that I say is, maybe if we look at the disproportionate rate at which black people are adversely impacted by this virus, maybe black people should disproportionately have access to the vaccine. Maybe at the same rate. Not at the same rate as white people or other people, but at a rate that slows down this disproportionate adverse and dying number that Dr. Chris just pointed out. Call or go.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me. The disproportionate is impact on our community. We're looking at it from an economic standpoint. We have to start looking at this from an environmental standpoint. And the environmental, what she's talking about is the environmental impact that that COVID has had on our community. But COVID came in, and we were already under water of so many other pollutants that we haven't even looked at, because what's already in our environment
right.
has.
But Mike, I understand. No, but we got a half an hour, and I want to get through more of this, so I want to speed it up. So I understand all these environmental things, right? I get that. So, but Mike,
I understand, but we have to really lock in on the environmental impact.
But Mike,
in that we were already, all her data and advice is important that we need to, from an environmental standpoint, and we have disconnected. If
Right.
money's involved in our solution, we're gonna lose.
Mike, but what I'm saying to you is this. Mike,
listening.
no. But what I'm saying to you is this. I agree. We have all these environmental issues that have led to these underlying conditions. Got it. But what I'm asking is this. So because we have we have tightly packed urban communities. We have multiple generations living in one apartment because of poverty. We have all of these other things going on, right? And so we know that if somebody contracts COVID, they come back into this environment, it's easily spread, right? And then the underlying conditions lead us to a greater rate of death. Got it. So I'm saying, so because we know this, shouldn't we disproportionately be given the vaccine?
Well, yeah,
Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, if our community was receptive in large numbers to the vaccine, of course. I mean, we should be in front of the line.
That's all I'm asking. That was my only question. And so I think that one of the things that Biden should do is say black people at the front of the line. Any black person that wants a vaccine, anyone that wants a vaccine goes to the front of the line.
Yes.
But why not?
Yes.
If these data points are true, every black person who raises their hand and says they want a vaccine, why shouldn't they go to the front of the line?
Well, here
I
is,
agree.
and if I could add this point.
No, I ask you a question. I don't want to point. I want you to answer that question.
Well, let me answer it before you start shouting it down. Okay? Now, if he said black people to the front of the line, as you stated, let's look at what it's going to cause. Second thing, if he just...
What's it going to cause, Vincent?
No, let me finish.
But what's it going to cause?
Let me finish. If he therefore says, I'm giving access monies to put it in communities, then he says, without even saying it, okay, black people, sign up and go. Some things you don't have to actually put the black exclamation point on it to realize that it affects black people.
Wait a minute, but he didn't mind putting the black exclamation point he didn't mind putting the black
Explicit.
Yes. When it came to talking about how black people revived his campaign, how black people got him elected, how if it wasn't for black, he didn't have a problem doing that and talking about all the black people that he was going to have in his administration. He's a black, covered himself with black.
After the fish fry, black people voted him in. But,
right?
You know, absolutely. And we have to stop worrying about. Hold on. We have to stop worrying about what the mythology of what white people are gonna do. If the virus is wiping our community out, we need to be first them out. Everybody needs
Listen,
to get behind
what did Ayanna Presley say? Ayanna Presley.
We shouldn't be shameful to say.
Look,
we need to be in the front of it.
Ayanna Presley said, if you're afraid, wait a minute. Ayanna Presley said what? If you're afraid of being marginalized or stereotyped, then sit your ass down. Right? Right? And so now you're saying that Biden's concerned about being marginalized or stereotyped. Then sit down.
And when they came after her, you know, let's stand up for the people, she was like the rest of them, hiding in the tunnels. So now let's go back to the simple.
Wait a minute. What does that have to do? Wait a minute.
No.
Wait a minute.
You want to go back to now? You want to?
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Don't do that. I'm gonna mute you, Vincent. I just muted Vincent. I'm gonna mute Vincent. No, I'm gonna Vincent.
That's right. You
no.
never let me
finish. No, I do let you finish, Vincent. But I didn't finish. Vincent, okay, I'm gonna mute you again. I'm sorry, but because what you just did to Ayanna Presley, what you just did to her was disrespectful, uncalled for, and it was conflating something that had nothing to do with what we were talking about.
Yes, but what you do to Clyburn on a daily,
wait a minute.
Worse. Here's a man who's been in office and been doing a great job, but you call him fish fry.
Well, because that's what he has. He has a fish fry, and what he does. Wait a minute.
What you do to
Wait a
him
minute.
is
No. Wait a minute. Wait a
marginalizing, and it dismisses all the
no.
good work
No.
by
No.
calling him fish fry
No.
Clyburn.
No. So I want to know. So what?
And you saying it either?
So what I want to know, Vincent.
I can't hear you, Diane.
Right.
over
So wait a
here.
minute. So two things, Vincent. One thing about Ayanna Pressley, right? One thing about Ayanna Pressley, and it drew my ire, right? Because this woman had her what is it? The emergency buzzer in her office removed. Right? Somebody
It was
removed. What?
Pulled out.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so when you now say that she ran and cowered like everybody else,
She cowered.
what did you?
She was hiding there with the rest of them.
Right, but okay, translation, right? Because you were trying to make a point, right? What should she have done, Vincent? What should she have done?
What she should have done?
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is what she should have done.
What should she have done?
She should have done exactly what she did.
Right, then why'd you bring it up?
Let me
Then why'd you bring it up?
Then let me finish, Eric. I'd appreciate that. She should have kept herself safe. Okay, and I don't fight. I don't argue with anybody who wants to preserve their life. Okay, but what I am saying is this: relatively simple. Okay,
Yes, sir.
as we can demonize and marginalize Fishburne, and yet we hail some other people who do the exact same thing, and it's not fair, and it has to stop. Now I know Clyburn. I know Clyburn. Interviewed him, talked with him. This man has made it through one of the worst periods in American history against black politicians, and he's still there. That deserves a level of respect.
So how come you haven't given that respect before when we've talked about him? Why now? Why today?
Well, because you know what? At first, I was ignoring it, but it continues to do the same thing. I was hoping maybe at some point that it would mature and grow, but since it hasn't, I'm speaking up
Right.
about it.
Well, you know what, Diane? I don't even have a problem with that, right? We can have a conversation about Clyburn. But when all I said about Ayanna Pressley, so I want to reiterate, and then I want to get back to Dr. Chris thing. What I said about Ayanna Pressley was a statement that she made about if you're afraid of being marginalized and stereotyped, then sit down. And then you said that she ran and hid like everybody else. What did that?
I said she was hiding in the tunnel with everyone else.
What did that have to do with what I said?
Oh, well, the same thing that it had to do with anything else that you say, Eric. Obviously, if at some point in time, if I'm not agreeing, then there's a huge contradiction.
No. But what you did. But I want to be.
But yet you want to dive into this.
No.
And you do the exact same level of hypocrisy.
No. What I want to do is clarify what you did. What you did when I was talking about Joe Biden and not being afraid to stand up for the same black people that stood up for him. And I said that Ayanna Pressley said if he is concerned about being marginalized or stereotyped, then he should sit down. What you did was attack her. And you deflected from, you deflected from Biden's responsibility to stand up and not be afraid of being marginalized and stereotyped. That's what you did.
Okay, well, let me say this to that point, Eric, about Joe Biden and how he should, say black people get to the front of the line. Sometimes you don't always have to acknowledge that there's an elephant in the room.
He didn't have a problem saying that he was going to elect that he was going to have a black woman as his vice president. He didn't have a problem saying that. He didn't have a problem. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
The operative word in my statement is some.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is this. Never mind. Listen, I think you all got it.
Go back to the video.
I gotta go back to
question.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the speech that he gave on Friday regarding his COVID thing? Because he did mention, not that I'm defending him, because I'm still waiting for Eric to tear him apart his first 100 days, but he did mention that he was going to do the disbursement of the vaccine he didn't say in black neighborhoods, but he said in those marginalized neighborhoods that have suffered most from it. I don't know what that means. I
Right.
don't know if that's going to happen, but that is what he said. Right?
So
So
I,
let's just
I
see
understand.
how that happens.
No, so Jody, I heard that, right? But just like I hear people of color, I hear minorities, I hear all these things, right? And we know
Yeah.
when you're not specifically talking about black people, right? Everybody else gets moved to the front of the line. We know that historically.
Right.
And right? And so when he said marginalized communities, right? I'm going, okay, why wouldn't he say black? That's what I'm asking.
Because he's the president elect, and he can say a lot of things in which he feels better at.
That's no excuse, Vincent. And Clyburn is Black Clyburn. Just wanted to
So listen, let's play a little bit more of the
Lord, she
video.
done called him.
Oh no, here we go.
I get this frequently. Well, the coronavirus is just like the flu. No, it's not. The next time you hear someone say that the coronavirus is just like the flu, I want you to remember that 400,000 Americans are dead. I want you to remember, and this is less than a year from the first confirmed diagnosis, I want you to also remember that coronavirus is at least the third leading cause of death. And these are the numbers of persons that have died, estimated at best from the CDC, that have died from the flu for the past successive years from 2012 through 2020. Okay, so that's disinformation, and that's something you can dispel. Vaccines. So let's get into it. The heart of what we're going to talk about. There have been over 31 million doses of coronavirus that have been distributed. But shots in arms. So this number is a little bit outdated. The CDC hasn't updated. It was important for you to see when this was updated as of. You can also see Bloomberg, and I'll show you that in a few. Bloomberg reports that we're now about 13 million plus vaccinations in arm. Right? At least almost 11 million have received their first dose. If you see the graphic chart down below, you can see the breakdown between Pfizer and Moderna. Okay? Just so you know, in case someone is hearing for the first time, I was a participant in the Moderna coronavirus vaccine trial. I have been vaccinated since October. I got my first injection August 31st. I got my second injection October 2nd. Both Pfizer and Moderna have an interval in between the two injections. Pfizer's is 21 days, Moderna's is 28 days. But they are technically similar, meaning they have the same efficacy or effectiveness, and they have the same side effect or safety profile, okay? So when I start to describe side effects to you, I'm going to use myself as an example, as a part of this narrative, as well as using the millions of others and what has been reported. The Moderna vaccine trial that I participated in was roughly 30,000 Americans. The Pfizer trial was roughly 44,000 Americans. So before we could get to the point where the FDA through emergency use authorization could approve both of these mRNA, messenger RNA vaccines. Listen, here's another point of truth so you can dispel misinformation. These are examples of the first messenger RNA vaccines to make it to market and to be approved. But it's not the first time that we knew about the science. We've learned about messenger RNA as far back as about 30 plus years ago. And cumulatively through the years, most recently, because of outbreaks, related viruses in that SARS coronavirus family, respiratory viral infections or illnesses, MERS, and SARS, we learned so much. We learned about the spike protein. I'm going to talk about that when I tell you how these vaccines work. We learned that if you could attack the spike protein, that you would most likely be able to neutralize the infection. Okay, so when we were able to, we, meaning the scientific community, I say that a lot, when we were able to sequence in China first, sequence the genetic code of coronavirus in a matter of days, Pfizer, and in a matter of days, Moderna, working with the NIH, was able to design these messenger RNA vaccines. Why is that important? Because that quick amount of time is what contributed to the fact that we were able to have vaccines go through clinical trials in less than a year and be able to be approved on this preliminary basis. It's that. It's the science, folks. So when people say, I don't feel comfortable with the vaccine because the amount of time, I hear you. I hear you and I understand. But I also want you to know why we were able to do that. We didn't just discover this science. We've known about this science. We had a leg up. And because the science itself is unique, it is game changing. The science doesn't require us to grow viral proteins in a lab. The science doesn't require us to grow viral proteins in chickens or eggs. The science allows us to say, this is the genetic sequence of this virus. I can design a messenger RNA vaccine in the lab in a matter of days. That is mind-blowing. That allowed us to bring these vaccines to market sooner. Second thing that allowed us to bring these vaccines to market sooner, the fact that we had so much investment by the federal government into the process. And I hear we have all-time highs of skepticism and distrust of the federal government because of many of the reasons that I just explained. But this is an example of smart governmental action. Because the federal government invested in this process, $9.5 billion, drug companies were able to do something that they normally do sequentially, meaning they do one step first and then do a second step second. They were able to do them in parallel. They were able to test the actual vaccine candidate and have people like myself participate while manufacturing doses. If the federal government had not given that money, the drug companies would not have done it because it would not be a financial incentive. They would have lost money to work on manufacturing something before they knew whether or not it worked. So the federal government said, I'm going to remove the risk to you so you can only focus on the science and the logistics. Remember that, because that is important for the public to know as we create pressure and advocacy for other issues, other diseases, especially diseases important to Black and brown communities, for there to be priority around sickle cell, for there to be priority around HIV, AIDS, and finding answers and solutions.
Okay.
So had the rollout with the information been more informative as to why they were able to develop this vaccine so quickly instead of hiding behind and allowing other people to create the narrative of this vaccine, we probably would not be in this situation, and more people would have been more inept to take the vaccine instead of throwing more precautions. So the lack of communication that came out of the government agencies, as well as the pharmaceutical companies and the scientists, instead of explaining clearly how this was all progressing so quickly and how they were able to get us to this point, we probably wouldn't have to have so much dialogue about talking about how Black Americans feel about the disparities and how they've been treated in the medical industry.
Right. And so just to reiterate about the government clearing way financially for them to do this, I mean, that was huge, right? I believe, Diane, it didn't happen because of politics, right? There was a whole thing. So the orange guy, 45, all of the horror and mayhem and everything that he has created, the lies, the this, the that, all those things, they didn't want there to be real or perceived credit given, right? So, because they could have, and this is what I'm saying. So the Rachel Maddows, all those people on the liberal stations that they had herded Black people in particular to watch, right, during the course of the election, right, to gin up this anxiety and hysteria over Donald Trump that, the democracy was crumbling, Black people were going to be vanquished from the planet and all this other kind of stuff, right? The sky is falling, as my younger brother would call me and tell me, all of that stuff. They could have used that too to run commercials, right? explaining just what Dr. Chris explained. We on this little show here, we're taking the time to do this. They couldn't have used their millions and millions of dollars and their influence to do it too.
Right.
Right.
So now you have to go back to the other elected officials on the lower levels. As the information started to come out, are you telling me that all of them were so unintelligent that they didn't ask the questions that this woman is giving the answers to as to why is it moving so fast? How did we get to this point? And how do we move out of this? And again, how is this going to affect the Black community? If you vaccinate people, what does that mean for us economically? What does that mean for our housing? What does that mean for education? Will the schools be reopened? Like, how is this all going to roll out?
Right.
And they don't still give the answers.
So Diane, so in my opinion, that none of that was important. The only thing that was important was stopping Donald Trump. That was it. That was it.
That's true.
So all of this other stuff now, so now they're rushing going, okay, now we got to fast track and we got to do all these things, right? But it was about stopping Donald Trump. And that's why we were on the show, we were talking about, oh my God. Oh my God.
What people
so
to look at it, now you go back and look at Nancy Pelosi, because she was on the inside and she knew what was going on, but she was pushing, like you said, stop Donald Trump. We need to impeach him. Let's do the impeachment trial. All of that was happening while COVID was still revving up, while the scientists were still doing what they were doing, but it still wasn't being dispersed out to the people.
Right.
So people should still look back at this system, this Democrat or Republican system of people that are now moving over and transitioning again into administration. How are they going to handle this any better than they did before? Because they put politics in their positions of head of America, and America is not talking about that.
Right.
If I could,
Go.
one of the things that we have to look at is not too much into yesterday and placing that that level of culpability. But let's look at what we're doing now. Now, of course, yes, the mission of America was to stop Donald Trump. Now, the mission of America is to get rid of the virus. And that's where we are. Oh, by the way, in terms of stopping Donald Trump, which you asked me earlier, Donald Trump won 74,222,958 votes. Biden won 81,283,098 votes. The official number.
Okay. So with regard to not looking back, so do you remember when I kept saying that we can blame Donald Trump for some of this, but at some point we have to move and look at what the states are doing, what the local elected officials are doing, what everybody else is doing, right? And the conversation here was, well, no, we got to go back and talk about Donald Trump. Now you're saying, oh, we don't want to go back now. We want to go forward. So, but then it was, let's go back. Let's go all the way back to November. Let's go back to whatever. And now you say, don't go back. And I'm saying, no, see, I was always willing to go back, acknowledge it, and then say, but where are we now? Where are the governors? Where are the senators? Where are the mayors? Where are all of them? So when you had Murphy, when you had not only Murphy, but you had Murphy, and you had Cuomo, you had Murphy, and then in Newark you had Ras Baraka doing all of these lives, right? Getting these thousands and thousands and thousands of people watching them, right? I said to you that they were drunk with all of this, but they could have been sharing this kind of information. Right? They could have been, but that was not the goal. And so think about it. Had at the mayoral level, they shared it, they would have to now hold the governor responsible for not sharing it. So that would have caused a ripple within the party that was trying to stay unified around what message? Stop Donald Trump. right? Let us not fight within the party about these kinds of things. And so now, and then you should have had within there, if you had Murphy who had the cojones to talk about it, then he should have been pushing all of the other if not the Republican, the Democratic governors to be talking about it. Why isn't Cuomo on here talking about this? Why isn't this one on there talking about this? Why? But they had to be unified. They had to be in lockstep. And meanwhile, while they were all in lockstep, and guess what? The mainstream media wasn't holding their feet to the fire to talk about it. So they were all colluding to do this thing over here at the expense of primarily black people. Meanwhile, they're messaging to these same black people that are dying disproportionately, come out and frickin' support me.
That's right.
Come on.
Yes, they did.
Tell the truth. Shame the devil.
Absolutely.
And now you say to me that guy who is president is concerned about how people gonna feel about him if he steps up and says, I love black people the way they loved me.
Yeah, he didn't say
Come
that.
on.
He said, black people, you have my back and I'll have yours.
Well, then have our back and then step up and say it. And don't be afraid of being marginalized and stereotyped.
Okay, again, another politician does not subscribe to the Eric Dawson speech.
Call it go.
Hey, and you can't, to Vince's point, you can't know what's going on around you until you know what went on behind you. But we have to remember Dr. Fauci's role in this, because in large part, yeah, he was saying some things and speaking up on issues, but that should have been the monetary, how this thing was being funded, and the science behind it, whether we understood it or not. Dr. Fauci was talking down to people a lot of the time, and too concerned with what he was saying that was going to go into the administration, and what they were saying that he didn't put out the message, and this scientific message should have been passed down to the state scientific officers, and this message should have been rolled out instead of people getting on Facebook Live and just talking about masks and so forth and so on. So I agree, and Fauci, we have to understand that a lot of what is happening now should have been spoken about from the very beginning, because I didn't understand that. We all just understood how these medicines was coming about. They dragged their feet on giving colleges money, colleges work with the pharmaceutical community, and these things drag out for years. But all the money that went out there from all different governments and countries that made this thing come about so fast, and working on the technology and coding up the vaccine. So, but Dr. Fauci was being political too. Don't leave him out.
Oh, no. I'm saying they all were.
He was political. And when he started to push back and tell stuff, that's when Trump shut him down. But he kind of was on his job as well.
Right.
But now, I'm going to say this.
Where they were talking about Trump was going to fire Fauci until he found out that he couldn't fire Fauci.
But this is what I want to say. And then we may have to hold, the rest of Dr. Chris's. She did an extraordinary job. But you've noticed, right, that that they've had her travel the media circuit, right? Dr. Chris was on Channel 2, she was on Channel 4, she was on MSNBC, she was on CNBC, right? So they had her travel the circuit, but they had her travel the circuit after. So, again, I'm saying, like, this person had all this information. So, and somebody knew her. Somebody obviously knew how to connect her to the media, right? But now, all of a sudden, she's out there. Why not earlier? Right? Why did it give her access earlier? And we as black people, and so what I would like to do is I'd like the Rachel Maddows now to do some real investigative reporting and find out why Dr. Chris Purnell, didn't make it to those shows earlier. What was the holdup? Who held it back? Who
I'd
held?
like to be married to Holly Berry, but there's a huge probability of that not happening.
No, I know it's not going to happen, but there lies my issue, right? Because if Rachel started calling for that, right? Like, wait a minute. This she's been. Why wasn't this? Why weren't we? And see, if she starts calling for that, right? And they start, then I might have a little more respect for her, but she won't, because those people who write her checks tell her that wasn't our agenda.
Right, and Rachel Maddox doesn't have a lot of guests on her show. She pretty much does the narrative herself and researches.
No, that's not true. That's not true. She has people on her. No, Rachel Maddow. Let us be clear now. Rachel Maddow's show, because of the number of views that she gets, her show is used very strategically to elevate people. So look at when she had Corey on her show. Look at when, right? Look at when she had Judge Buttigieg on her show. Look at when. See, go look. See, I see these things. Look at the trajectory of the campaign itself, right? Democrats. And then look at the trajectory of the individual candidates, and look at who she chose to have on her show, who she didn't, and when she chose to have them on. See, it's not by happenstance. See, we gotta stop believing that these things are just happening and that they are not people carefully orchestrating the narrative.
I don't think anybody is that naive. I mean, at this point, we do know that there are people who orchestrate the narrative.
Right. So if they wanted Dr. Chris,
and understanding that the narrative is driven for most medias by what brings ratings.
So let me ask you this question, Vincent, then. Why do you think she didn't make it to Rachel Maddow's show?
You know what? I never even gave that a
No, but I want you to give it a thought now. Give it a thought now.
I mean, honestly.
No, but I'm saying, give it a thought now. Give it a thought.
But since you're asking me, I'm going to say this, that maybe Rachel Maddox has put on other guests, which I did see, who are saying the same thing.
Oof.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like you had Lori Thomas on your show, who said the same thing. In fact, you had Lori Thomas.
No, Lori didn't say this. No. Wait a minute.
But
Come on.
so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Lori's conversation with us was about vaccines in general, right? Her expertise, understanding of vaccines, how they work, talking to us about messenger RNA and those things. What Dr. Chris is talking about is she's talking about this thing from a perspective that explains why Black people need to be vaccinated, why Black people are dying at disproportionate. Lori wasn't talking about that.
Eric.
Wait, but I want to be clear.
When Lori was on What You Gotta Say, and we did that show, 3 weeks ago, on why Black people should take the vaccine, she said again the exact same thing.
Okay.
But it's just a matter of who they choose to get.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and she's brilliant, and I love that woman. And I sat up there and I watched her do it twice. Okay. But yet, she wasn't picked by mainstream media.
Okay.
So, Vincent, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, do you find it hard to admit that the Democratic Party allowed Black people to die for the election? Do you not believe that?
Oof.
It's not that I find it hard to admit. It's just because, people have died during the process of this election, that people were dying. But do also have to acknowledge that the Democratic Party did tell Democrats not to go and vote by mail-in ballot.
I'm not talking about the logistics of the election, right? But that, do you say financial? When we had the big conversation about that Nancy Pelosi wouldn't let the money come out because it had Donald Trump's name on the check, and that wasn't a good strategy during the election cycle. That people were hungry for that, right?
Well, can I, before you give me the next point, because I'm not really good at remembering the entire list, but on the point that you stated, I did look at that when they were having the election. They were back and forthing. Nancy Pelosi basically did not go or vote for it because the Republicans, all they were doing were talking, and then she said, okay, fine, put it to paper, and none of them did it.
So here,
remember, I clarified you on that one. It was that all that Mitch McConnell wanted was one line out of it. He was willing to sign off on it. Donald Trump was willing to sign off on it. But it was. They talked about it, right? On media in general, and Frank, that she did not want Donald Trump's name on that check, right? This is all I'm saying, right? And so I called in and defended your first conversation. But at the end of the day, right? If we don't start just being open and honest about it all, right? I can call Trump the orange dude. I can call Clyburn fish fry. I can rail in that space when it's due, right? The Democratic Party watched black people die.
Well, yeah.
I mean, an election, right? They didn't fight like they're fighting now, right? They didn't ask for him to be. They didn't ask for his impeachment because people were dying, right? They didn't ask for that because people were dying. But if they want to throw the impeachment out like it's a new card to play every time someone doesn't do something right? Wouldn't that have been the time?
Well,
wouldn't it have been the time when people were dying largely in our communities, and we had fish fry, and we had Nancy running us to the polls, right? Wasn't that the time to impeach? And that for the purposes of having...
I agree with that part.
Right? Yeah, so now the money's going to run out. The money's going to come. He's going to get inaugurated tomorrow, and checks will start running out on Thursday, right?
There you go.
Now we're going to line them up, and now we're talking about them in a bigger space. And that was done just so that one man could have a good 100 days. We lost lives. People lost jobs.
Well, I never gave it consideration that all of that stalling was caused so Joe Biden can have a good 100 days, because I've always looked at the fact that there is so much stuff on Joe Biden's plate. It doesn't take much for him to have a good 100 days. But I think that, yeah, a lot of it did play into why they lost the seats in Georgia. One of the biggest things in the exit poll was the virus and how it was being handled.
Right.
I think that Trump saying give him 2,000 and Mitch saying 600 had a lot to do with it.
Right.
So
look,
there were a lot of political gamesmanship that.
Look, I want to dispense with all of that. I want to say this, right? And then because we're past 12 o'clock. The Democratic Party made a calculation, and they realized and were willing to have black people be collateral damage in their war against Donald Trump. Right? We just gotta say that, right?
No doubt.
Okay. So and so my thing now is that black people have to understand that, right? That you were pawns in this war. And we died disproportionately as a result. And now we have a guy who, because of how he might be perceived, won't stand up for us like we did for him. Listen, this just came across my thing. And we didn't get to talk about we brushed over the 25,000 plus National Guardsmen. This came across from CNN that 2 Army National Guards members were just removed from inauguration duty because of security issues. So, listen. This thing, when we talk about this being in the DNA of this country, the very DNA, it goes beyond, like, so think about what people have tried to do before to make us believe they were really doing something. So whether it was the folks at Starbucks, right, who said when the police were called on the black gentleman, we're going to have sensitivity training, right? Or all these other instances. And I'm saying, no. See, you got to understand the culture that these people who are doing these things grew up in, right? So they grew up in this. So dealing with them now, like taking somebody who has this embedded in them to a sensitivity training, they're going to go through the motion so that they don't lose their job, right? They're going to check the right boxes so that they don't lose their job. But they are who they are because this structure built them like that. And so now, even in our armed forces, right, that had to be called out, 25,000 plus, unprecedented, right? We have to now vet them. We have to vet them.
Eric, being a member of the armed forces, I can tell you with 100% surety that the United States military is probably one of the most prejudiced groups ever. But there is another thing that actually happens. When we were in the foxhole, you tend not to care if this guy's black or white, but you care that he has his back. But we have had incidents of that. And look, I've even taken on Klan members in the Army. Okay, it's there. Now, anybody who thinks that it's not is in la la land. Okay, because the Army consists of people of the United States, and the United States has a huge level of white supremacy, racism, and white privilege that goes way deeper than here and now. So yes, that was a huge thing, and the best thing that they ever did was send the psych ops in there to evaluate them, just like when they evaluate the Iraqis who they get to work for us. They put them through the same profile, and they need to be out, and they need to be dispelled. Because the worst thing that you want is to have somebody who's supposed to be watching your back shooting you in it.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Listen, black folk, we got to understand. We got to understand what's going on. I'm telling you, we got to understand what's going on. We got to understand what's going on.
You guys aren't going to be on tomorrow, right?
You know what? No, Jody, you know what? We may do this tomorrow because we got to get this. We got to finish unpacking. Dr. Chris was brilliant. Brilliant.
Eric, you said that last time, had me all set up, sitting up there like.
Because you know what? I've been worried. Like, it's just not worried. I'm not worried. That's a lie. But I have been. It's been on my dome that tomorrow's not going to go off without a hitch. It's not going to just like be a good day. I don't believe it will. I'm curious to see. As a human being, I hope no one.
Well, you know why it's going to go off, Diane? Jody, it's going to go off without a hitch. It's got to, because the corporation of white supremacy can't have this national disaster occur. Do you understand? See, understand this. If this doesn't go off without a hitch, this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, that sends those who are in the slave quarters off the deep end, right? And they can't have that. So they got to quell this thing. This is why they're doing what they're doing right now with these National Guardsmen. They said, look, we can't. We got to tone this down now. It's over. The election's over. We gotta get the Negroes back on the plantation. Right now, there's uncertainty, right? And so when there's uncertainty, there's fear. And so white folks are fearful. And everything is in, and they said, we got to calm it down. Right?
Well,
and so Joe Biden.
I'm not going to sit up here and say that the sky is falling, but I will say that I am going to exercise on the side of hope. I truly hope that, those white supremacists who've been shooting their little guns and playing in the woods, who have been waiting for, pushing for, and anticipating the Civil War to start over black people. I really hope that they have now decided that this is not going to work, because I believe in every bone that it will not end well.
What'd you say, Diane?
Close us out with what the definition of hope means. It's 1209.
Wait a minute. What did I pulled that up yesterday, right? Hold on.
From Merriam-Webster Dictionary.
Right. Hope. Hold up for a second. I want to read. This is the despair of the black people, because we hope, right? We hope and we wish, right? That's what it is. It's about wishing, right? Hope.
A feeling and expectation of desire for a certain thing to happen.
Okay.
Right. Hold on. Here we go. Ready? This is the Merriam-Webster's definition. Hope seems closer to the word wish. To cherish a desire with anticipation, to want something to happen or to be true. Whatever the details, hope in general means a desire for things to change for the better and to want that better situation very much. Right? But not to work for it, but to want it. See, let's understand. Not to work for it, but to want it. We want it. Not to work for it. To hope. To want.
Another understanding of it.
Not to demand. Wait a minute. Not to demand. Not to expect. But to hope. Very passive. To wish. To want.
Everything that you said in terms of not hope, because to want, not to demand, not to expect, not to, but to wish. The difference with hope is that the simple acknowledgement that in which you want or desire to happen is beyond your control and happening.
Well, wait a minute. But I said this yesterday when Diane and I did our clubhouse, which I thought was really fun. And just I'm gonna leave you guys with this. We don't hope that our kids go to school. We demand that they go to school. We don't hope that they pass the test. We demand that they pass the test. We don't hope these things, all right? So that word hope is still in the dictionary, but we don't apply it here.
You're taking that out of content.
No, I'm not.
Those things in which you said that we don't, our children are in our control. We have some level of control with them.
Wait a minute, Vincent. Wait a minute. They're individual people, just like the mayor is, right? Just like the senator is, just like they're individuals. Why do we have control there, but we don't have control here?
Because I have that level of control with my child when I demand.
Do you really?
Or let me, God, Eric, when I demand or expect that of my child to do, I have the control of issuing our level of discipline if those demands are not met.
And you don't have
in terms of all these white supremacists coming out there, I have very little to no control of keeping them from coming out.
Okay, so we're gonna end with this. We're gonna end with that. We'll pick that up tomorrow. The fact that we feel we don't have control. Let's talk about that tomorrow, right? That we go out and we vote at 90 whatever percent, and hoping and wishing, because we know we don't have control.
No. See, now we know for a fact that when we go out with 91% of the black vote that we're winning.
But we don't have control. Let's talk. We'll pick that.
You have control of your one vote.
I want y'all to listen to this. We'll pick it up tomorrow, and maybe this is why we're so far behind, because we don't have control, and we just relegate ourselves to just hoping and wishing.
Control.
Thank you guys. You guys have a great one. Jody, you know what? I'm gonna commit to being on tomorrow if these guys can do it. So that we can finish Dr. Chris's work, because she's done beautiful work with this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day. Continue to wear your mask. Right? Continue to spread factual information. Dispel myths and rumors. Love you all. And like Vincent says, if it's God's will, we'll be back here to share more.